Welcome to PodCapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. And this week, it's the classic tale of a robot and a demonic mouse. I mean, we've all heard that story, let's be honest. Cue the music! Hello there, capers, and as I said, welcome to PodCapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. My name is Scott James Merridew, and this is the show where we talk about various geek and nerd-related topics, and are joined each week by a very special different guest. Now, today we're going to be talking about this really fascinating little comic called Cognition. I'm pleased to be joined by the writer of said comic. Give it up, capers, for Ken Reynolds!
Hi Scott, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you? Where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm at home in palatial Suffolk. Well, not palatial, but Suffolk. I live in Ipswich. That's where I work.
Suffolk's a lovely part of the world, let's be honest.
In places, yeah.
In places, yeah. Where does it live? I've never lived in Suffolk. I think my sister went to university in Chichester. That's in Suffolky area, isn't it?
I think so.
Okay, so my British geography is not that great. I'm sorry.
It's East Anglia. It's the pointy bit that no one really thinks about a lot.
Oh yeah. Oh,
it sticks out.
Oh yeah, the wart on Britain's rump, if you will.
I wouldn't go that far.
No, I have no boundaries. I'm so sorry. So tell us a bit about yourself, Ken. Who are you? What do you do?
I'm a graphic designer by trade. I get things ready for print, and about 4 or 5 years ago now, I started properly getting into making comics.
Oh, and what prompted that?
At the birth of my daughter.
Ah.
I'd always had an interest in comics all the way through my 20s, really. But I'd never, for some odd reason, I always had it fixed in my mind that you had to do the whole thing, had to do everything on the page. So I struggled with it a lot and could never really get anything I was very happy with. And I'd always freelanced from my day job and just to pick up extra jobs that were a bit more creatively interesting. And as soon as we had a child, it dawned on me that my free time might be a little more limited.
Just a tad, you know. I hear that taking care of new human beings takes up a bit of your time.
It does. It's very inconvenient. But so I figured what little free time I had, if I was going to do something, it would have to be quite enjoyable.
Absolutely.
So I decided to really double down on the comics thing. And once I got into it, I realised that my design skill set pretty much was quite helpful to a lot of people with lettering and with pre-press and things like that. So that was my foot in the door. I started teaching myself lettering and working with other people, and lettering's perfect for networking. You get to work with a lot of creative teams. You get to meet a lot of people. And
everyone needs a letterer.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what you do. You're professional in terms of that. You provide lettering services.
Yes, that's how I started. I started with Dave Hailwood on 100% biodegradable. 100% biodegradable, which is
one of those words. It's one of those words. You know the words I mean. They're one of those words that just refuses to leave your mouth naturally.
Care to share a few?
Oh God, what was the one? Oh God. Oh. Suggest show topics I say that at the end of every single episode, and every single time if you could see me, capers, you would see the veins and the neck muscles in my neck just bulging out every single time because I'm just trying to force it out. Suggest show topics. Yeah.
So yeah, Dave was kind enough to give me a chance. He always lettered his own stuff, and he was quite glad that someone was quite keen to do it because I think he was a bit bored with it.
So, it's one of those things about comic that it needs to be done. You might be able to have a comic with no words. It's entirely possible, but I think most people kind of expect it nowadays. And if you don't have it, if it's not good, it's not going to make for a very fun read.
Sadly, it's the first thing that gets cut. If you're short on budget, it is the first thing where people go, oh well, I'll give it a go, and. Yeah. And yeah, there's still cases where you can tell people have given it a go. And I'm not going to say it's a mysterious art or anything like that, but it's like anything. the tools are available to everyone. It is possible for everyone to give it a go, but there is a certain amount of knowledge and there is a certain amount of skill in doing it, and that's what you pay a letterer for. It's for them to do a good job a lot quicker without all the figuring out.
Yeah, and people don't pay for like shop signage and stuff. They don't just do it themselves, because then you've got some hideous scrawl on the side of your business or wherever saying, please come inside, we're ever so good, and it just doesn't work compared to actual proper professional work.
You haven't walked through Ipswich lately. There are still people trying to give it a go.
The fools!
But no, there will always be people that try and cut the corners. But for me, lettering is glaring. But because I'm so close to it, I can't read a comic where I just can't get along with the lettering. It really does ruin it for me.
Oh yeah, it's like when I first started learning script writing and went on the script writing at university, post, under, and post, and now it's. I mean, I still love movies, but now I can't watch a movie unless it's very good and completely absorbing, where I'm not thinking about the writing process or the dialogue and stuff like that. And it's not made me very popular at my parents' house. Can't you just watch the movie? No, I can't. I'm broken.
Well, it's true. Once you look behind the curtain and see how things work, I guess, yeah, once you know how you're being manipulated, it's hard to go along with it, isn't it?
But it gives you a greater appreciation for when it's good. When you look at a good movie, a good script, or good lettering, even if it's something very basic, very fundamental, and very foundational, it's still something you can appreciate.
You can, yeah, with lettering especially, I think it is underappreciated because when it is done well, it's seamless. You don't notice it. Good. You never finish a comic with great lettering and go, wow, that was great lettering. Because if it's done properly, it shouldn't stick out. It should just integrate into the page and be part of the narrative and stitch the narrative together. I mean, it shouldn't jump out at you and
make for an easy read rather than a hard read.
Yeah.
Because I've read comics in the past where a lot of the lettering is done where it's sort of like it's an evil character, it's done all weird and blocky, and some lettering where it's like, if it's like a handwritten journal extract, it's all in a joined up cursive writing, and that's fine, and it can be very good situation appropriate, you know, but it's also, I find that very hard to read, especially the joined up handwriting stuff, because it's just it's a bit of a different track from the usual sort of lettering format, but also it's often quite small, and you have to trick your brain to think, and you have to think while you're reading. You don't really want to think about it. You want to be, again, absorbed into the narrative.
And no, and that's right. If there's anything on the page that takes you out of the experience of the narrative, and it goes the same with art. Some people have art tics where if you notice it, it sort of takes you out of the story. There's a multitude of things that can do that, but yeah, lettering is one of the obvious ones when done badly, and it's where lettering sort of crosses over with a bit more of graphic design and straight up typography, with the balance of form and function, and like you say, different fonts and different approaches for different specific actions. So like you say, with handwriting and things like that, there are fonts out there that suggest handwriting, but they've still got a very comic book aesthetic that's easy to read, and some people still hand letter, and which I don't. I will admit I'm all digital, but I really do admire hand lettering still. It's quite special to see.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, it's also it's the other side of it as well. You've got the amateurish side with people doing it, not doing it very well, and there are people who are trying to be weird and creative out there. It's kind of like those people that send out like birthday invitations with like one of those weird, long forgotten Microsoft Word fonts, and it's just like, you know, just do Times New Roman. We're not special. We don't need anything crazier out there. Don't do Comic Sans. What are you thinking? No, that's not what I meant.
I did have a Kickstarter digital download that was lettered in Comic Sans, and I can't read it. I just the art looks really nice. The story would seem quite engaging, but it's Comic Sans all the way through, and I just can't bring myself to do it.
It's wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah.
But let's talk about something that's actually right, something actually good, which is this comic. I really like this comic.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I like the title because it's a play on words, and I have a special soft spot in my cold black obsidian heart for those sort of things. Cognition, because it's a steam robot guy, but it's also like his mind, so there's a cognition, but it's also the cog, and I like that.
Good. It was originally, when it was a sort of a seed of an idea, it was just going to be cog, but I mean, it's just a minute of Googling anything that's named cog, and there's 100 things. So I had to go back to the drawing board and think. And yeah, I do like a play on words.
Yeah, but a good play on words, like a clever one, and I mean, because this is a clever book. So let's just talk us a bit about Cognition. What's Cognition all about?
Right, it's about a steam-powered robot that's inhabited by a human soul and a demonically possessed mouse. And I haven't actually explained why yet, but they are spiritually linked. They're trapped together. Although they inhabit separate bodies, their consciousness is linked, and they can't get away from each other. And they don't get on very well.
It's a very antagonistic relationship between the two of them.
Yes, very. It's like being stuck permanently in a room with someone you despise, but you have to get along because there's no escape.
Like a group project at university.
Yes. Or like work.
Or like work, yeah. Okay, Kevin, yeah, I get it. You want to go for your break, but we've got a project, we've got a deadline. Let's just do it. Let's just do it, okay? Please. Don't make this day any harder, Kevin. We all know a Kevin.
Yes.
Oh,
so they work for the British Occult Secret Service, which is a nice acronym.
Boss.
Down to boss. Yeah, I was very pleased with that. And they investigate occult and supernatural events for Queen Victoria in the 1850s, it's that.
Yeah, God bless her, Madge.
Yeah. She might make an appearance at the end of this latest one, actually.
Ooh, dare we dream.
Yes.
As I say, it's so cool because I really do like the Victorian aesthetic, the Victorian time period, that sort of Gothic era. I really like that, but I also like how you've combined the very naturalistic elements of the time period with this fascination that was very prevalent at the time with mysticism and spiritualism and the occult and mythology and folklore, but also it's looking to the future as well with the main character Cal, who's a robot, and also faint whisperings of a new technological age, the Industrial Revolution and stuff like that. So it's one of those things that I think it perfectly encapsulates both the genre of Victorian Gothic as well as the actual historical era.
Well, as you say, the Victorian era was very interesting. I mean, great change, great technological change, but in a lot of ways, people were still very much rooted in superstition and supernatural explanations for things. And part of what fascinated me about the time and what I felt encapsulated what the sort of thing I was trying to go for is Arthur Conan Doyle.
Ah, yes.
So his writings start off with Sherlock Holmes very much based in the real world, in logic over all things. And as his writing career progressed and some tragic things in his life, he turned to spiritualism and things started getting a lot stranger. And
downhill. Downhill is the word I would use.
I wouldn't say downhill, but there was an obvious transformation in his thinking of pure logic, and which sort of jives with the industry and technology of the time, to have a mind like that turn to spiritualism. I just found that
it's one of the greatest enigmas of that time period for me. For Arthur Conan Doyle, who created this character that was based in such a strong foundation of objectivity and reason, and then he goes and thinks, hey, these Conley fairies are real. It seems like such a contradiction to me.
Wasn't it the death of his son that sparked it?
No.
That's right. It might have been something like that. I think there's some sort of trauma in it, and that sort of makes it a bit more understandable. But I still think it's of the time. There had to be quite a prevalent movement available for him to sort of be open to that sort of change. But it's also sort of a Pinocchio story as well. That's where the seed of it came from.
Oh, right. So when you were thinking about, you were thinking like Pinocchio robot, or was it a bit more ephemeral than that?
Well, I think that was a jumping on point. Is sort of a life within an inanimate, in another one of those words, inanimate. um, so there were lots of cues feeding into it, but it moved away quite quickly in the writing, and I like to think that it sort of distinguished itself quite well in the mixture.
Absolutely. In reading it, I've read issue 0 and issue 1, and reading those two stories, I'd say absolutely, yeah. I mean, you could, if you thought about it for a long time, you might make the connection between like Pinocchio and the robot and stuff like that, who wants to be a real boy. But it's, I think there's enough, as you say, distance between the two, and enough original ideas, and it's one of those creative storm things where, yeah, you might see the inspiration, but it doesn't matter because the story itself is distinct.
Yeah, that's what I tried hard to do. I mean, a lot of reviewers and things go to Victorian England BPRD aesthetic, and I can see the jump. And I do like Hellboy, and I have read BPRD, but I don't think that was too forward in my mind. But the more I think about it, the more it could easily fit inside that sort of universe.
Yeah, but here's the thing, even if it were to, I mean, in reading it, I haven't read that much of Hellboy or BPRD, but in reading it, I think, I don't know, I just think I think it's fine. I think maybe it could fit in there, but at the same time, like, they don't own that aesthetic, they don't own that ideas, so if you want to be similar, which I don't think it is that similar, but even if it was, that's okay.
And I mean, I always get a bit annoyed when people say, "Oh, I've come up with a great idea," and then 5 minutes later you'll hear them say, "Oh no, it's already been done," and that always really quite irritates me because
we're telling like the same 5 stories over and over again since the dawn of time. You're not going to come up with anything truly original.
No, there's originality isn't all it's cracked up to be. I always sort of, whenever I start off something, I always think, well, no one's heard me tell this story.
Exactly.
And I think
the stories might not be original, but the people telling the stories can be.
It is in the telling, and if you team up with the right people like I have on this one, I think Sam put so much more into it than through his art.
There's that Sam Bentley. So how did you hook up with him? How was the collaboration between the two of you?
Well, it was through lettering. I did some lettering for a gentleman called Nathan Slack, and he had I think it was a 1800s vampire story. I did some lettering for him, and I think he got Sam to do a pin-up or a cover or something, and he showed it to me. He was quite excited about it.
Okay, and it just went from there.
Yeah, it did. I knew early on that I was going to keep it a very stark black and white aesthetic, mainly to keep print costs down, because it was my first project that I was really pursuing hard. And I thought, well, there is going to be a time where I come to print this, and I always like books that set out to be black and white. I never wanted it to look like we just didn't have enough money to colour it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I mean, I think the thing that I've seen a lot of things that are in black and white as well, but this has sufficient detail in it, and the way it uses the black and white, I think works really well. It's not like something like Sin City, which is very well done, but is very stark and blank and has a lot of empty parts of it and isn't superbly detailed, which works in its favour, but at the same time I prefer the detail. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of the black and white stuff. I prefer my stuff to be a bit more, for want of a better phrase, cartoony, a bit more vibrant. But here's the thing. Despite the fact that I don't really like that style, I still liked it in this comic because, for me, it fit. Not just in terms of like printing costs, but also just like in terms of the aesthetic and the tone that you were going for. It worked.
It creates atmosphere.
Absolutely. This comic book is atmospheric as fuck.
Yes, and the main premise of the book, as we've discussed with the two characters, is a duality, and I think black and white, very stark black and white, just plays into that whole idea as well. And as you read it through the series, Sam has really evolved the aesthetic of how to treat the characters and how to treat the framing and everything, and he's really developed over what will be 5 books when we get to the end of this Kickstarter. It's quite subtle, but it is there. There is a real progression in how he approaches it.
It's good. We talked about stuff like that on this show before. I always like progression and that sort of thing, but it's not. I hate massive overhauls because that can be very jarring.
Yes.
And it's sometimes with a lot of comics, especially major comic books, you see, different writers, different artists come and go, and that's fine. But it's when it's really, really distinct differences that it's a bit like artistic whiplash in a way. But then you got smaller stuff where it's people improving or changing subtle ways over time that it means that you're paying attention to your comic book. You're not on autopilot, and you're growing and making an actual effort to see, okay, what can we do different? Where can we go moving forward?
Absolutely. To me, it's like improving visual effects halfway through the process, not changing cinematographer.
Yeah.
Way through a film sort of thing. So, like anything, Sam will have been doing the art for this over about 2.5 years now, which isn't a bad rate for small press. We've got 5 issues out in about 2.5 years. So, like anything you do for 2.5 years, you are going to figure out slightly better ways of doing it. You are going to want to grow. I would never expect him to sort of try and keep true to the style of something that he did 2.5 years ago, because that's it would be unfair on him. And although it's slightly different at the end, I think it is better. But, well, you ask any artist to go back and look at something they did 2 years ago, they would approach it differently.
Yeah, it's never going to be the same, nor should it be.
No, absolutely not.
That comes back to this idea of change and how it's a good thing, but it's not necessarily the same as progress, which is something that got brought up in, I thought, a very interesting story in issue 0, with these sort of like pagan neo-Luddite people.
Yes, I guess they're the baddies, really. I did that little 4-page setup to introduce what would be the adversary for the Ark, and the neo-Luddite Church. This group of people that don't believe in progress or technology, obviously taking their name from Ned Ludd, who I can't remember what. It goes back a few more centuries.
Well, it was before or around the Georgian period, before the what was it? The Regency era.
Yes, and they were the frame breakers. They used to go around smashing up all of the weaving looms and things like that, because they were taking jobs away from people. And
I see what I love about that is an issue that's still prevalent today.
Absolutely.
People are being replaced by robots, and so the industries are becoming a thing of the past. And this is something that from the 1700s, or maybe even a bit before then, it's never stopped since then. I always find that very, very interesting, because especially in this comic, because one of the reasons that people they're talking about in this particular story of issue 0 is that it's not so much the machines they hate, but more how they're being utilized and how they're a symbol, or rather a tool, of a corrupt empire and overruling let's call it a dictatorship, for want of a better word, and in terms of how it treats people and how people are being crushed underfoot, not necessarily by the machines themselves, but by the people who are inventing the machines for profit and for control and power.
It's been an interesting challenge over the course of this arc, and I haven't really tackled it head on, but it's
if you tackled it head on, then the whole comic will become revolving around this one singular thing. This is good flavour.
You could easily do. I mean, I like to do short comics at the end of each full issue, and the one at the end of issue 3 does tackle the attitude of the Empire a bit more. It like I said, it involves Queen Victoria, and she has a long monologue in it about I give her a reason why the Empire does the things it does.
Yeah, I haven't read issue 2 and issue 3, but I would really like to see that, because it'd be interesting to see how Queen Victoria could justify all these sort of stuff.
Well, I give it a good go, but that one's being drawn at the minute. That should be done by the end of the Kickstarter. So, but I take a bit of a parent aesthetic as Monica's parent, as making hard decisions to look after the most amount of people possible. But it's very strange I never wanted to justify the actions of the Empire, and I never wanted to
understanding is not the same as condoning.
No. So it was a tough line to walk, and it was interesting when I sent that one out to. I have a few beta readers, And I always have a few things that I want directed feedback on, and that was one of them. I wanted it to be quite even-handed on that. And the trouble is, it's the distinction between commenting on the real world and still making it relevant to the story you're telling, because it's separate from the real world. So that's the justification for my Queen Victoria. And I don't want to put too heavy comment on history, but maybe a suggestion of something to think about in our real history.
See, that's what I think. That bit in particular made me think that just how good your writing is, because a good writer, when they're doing something like this, doesn't give you the complete picture. They give you an outline, they give you a vague form of an idea and present it to you. A lazy writer would just pose a question and say, well, what do you think? Motherfucker, you're supposed to tell me the ideas because you're the writer. But an overly involved writer or a pretentious writer or an auteur would just give us the complete idea, complete picture, and give us the answer, say, there you go, accept it. Like, no, I want to think about this.
I'll have to go back and read my script now, make sure I haven't done that. But no,
I don't think you have. The stuff I've read, I don't think you've done that.
No, I don't think so. It's just, it is a very interesting... It's fun to pick through the bits of history that I want to explore. But there is a certain amount of responsibility that you have to sort of take with that, because it's very folklore heavy, the stories. I was going to say using, but referencing, I should say.
Yeah, because I have I say I have an interest. I kind of have an interest in British mythology and folklore because I've done a lot of research for this other stuff that I'm doing. And I like how you've, in the second issue, I haven't read it, but you included Black Shuck, also known as Barguest, the Black Dog, the Kirkyard Grim, Guy Trash, Yethhound, Kusith, the list goes on. He's a very enduring, a very popular British legend.
And it's a very Suffolk legend as well. We have there's a very famous incident of it in I'm trying to think. It's not very far from where I live, but I can't remember the name now. But there's claw marks in a church door, and there's a lovely story about it's Blytheborough Church. That's it, Blytheborough Church, which isn't very far from me, and it actually features in the story. I use it as a precursor to explain what the monster is all about. And you go around all of the UK, and everyone has their black dog. Everyone has their spectral hound. And
even in France and places like that, there's similar legends popping up. And I find that fascinating. I think it's a great idea and a great sort of symbol to use in any sort of story. I mean, that's why Arthur Conan Doyle sort of referenced it.
Yeah. And it's just I love these oral histories that just endure and they get passed along. And I like to think that by carrying them forward into our own stories, it's just helping them evolve a bit further and carry them further on, which I really love. Absolutely. The third issue, I go quite deeply into Welsh mythology.
Oh, now see, I don't know that much about Welsh mythology, but I did recently read the first book in the Chronicles of Prydain series, the Book of Three. Have you read that?
No, I haven't.
It's the best reference I could give you is that Disney made a movie about the second book, sort of, called The Black Cauldron. Fucking Disney, but it's actually a really interesting book. It's aimed at children, but I wanted to read it just cause, and it delves very heavily into Welsh mythology and uses lots of Welsh-inspired names and place names and mythology, and I found it very fascinating for someone who has maintained an absolute abhorrence of anything Welsh.
But it's just crazy stuff. It's giants and demigods, and yeah, I do have a Cauldron of Resurrection that is part of the legend that I explain, and it's just it's massacres at weddings and battles over family.
Wait a minute, that's Game of Thrones.
Well, where do you think he read?
He stole it.
As we keep saying, there's no originality. It's just the way you tell it.
Yeah, I mean, if you went through Game of Thrones, the books, I'm sure you'd find a whole host of references to various mythologies and stories and folklore from around the world. It's fine because, I mean, I'm a bit of an adaptation nut. I like faithfulness in terms of adaptation. But one of the things I've always maintained is that when you're adapting a folk tale or mythology or something, you can change whatever the hell you want, because these stories started out orally, and when you tell a story orally, it changes every single time you tell it. So it's a very fluidic structure, and a very fluidic sort of story. So changes are A, allowed, and B, to be expected.
Absolutely. And I mean, just last night I was reading my daughter a bedtime story, and she's got this massive book of fairy tales. And I started reading one, and I recognized it as one of the particularly gruesome ones from the Brothers Grimm, but it had been watered down and tried to make child friendly. But there was still murder and leaving kids in the middle of forests to fend for themselves, and
people wearing red hot iron shoes.
Yeah, and the Grimm fairy tales, how they ever sanitize that for children is unbelievable, because just really mad stuff.
It started out as cautionary tales like, hey, don't go into the woods, kids, because there's strange creatures lurking in there. Don't go playing near the river because Jenny Greenteeth will get you. When actually people were just afraid that their kids would get lost in the woods or drown. That's
right, but you know that there was a weirdo 5 villages over that made it really gruesome for his kids, and that was the one that got passed on to the next village. And
yeah. And Bro's going to say, okay, we've had a couple of stories, they're pretty good, but this one guy, holy shit, that'll sell like hotcakes. It's I know, I just like you're interpreting that, as well as getting the more futuristic, steampunky sort of aesthetic. So let's talk about, what are two main characters? Let's talk about Cal. How'd Cal's design come into play?
I take a bit of credit for that, because this was sort of when I was struggling to... I conceived this planning to do everything myself quite a few years before I decided to give comics a real go. And I think I've got a few pages of artwork somewhere that I was never really happy with, particularly. But I had his basic design sorted out with this strange hangdog expression of a mouth, and...
It's very Iron Giant-y, but diminutive.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure that the robot was smaller than human beings. I wanted it to be short, but I like the way Sam frames things, that it's a bit Tolkienish. You know how you sort of forget that the hobbits are small sometime, until somewhere in the prose that he'll remind you how small they are compared to other people, and they're just characters otherwise. Yeah. And I quite like how he frames things, where you just see him as a robot until you see him next to people, and then you see him fighting something else. Which
size and shapes are relative.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the steampunk aesthetic, it's not actually very heavy on the steampunk.
No, he's steam powered, but like the only thing you get is like little steam exhaust bits on his back. Yeah,
and I go on to explain in the story, he's actually a failed experiment. There's a lady inventor who presents him at the Great Exhibition at Crystal Palace, and he doesn't work. And then the man from the British Secret Service comes along and offers his card. And the next you see is Cal with a soul, and it's not really explained how it happens yet, and I haven't really got to that yet, but I quite like leaving a few things unexplained.
So we don't need everything served to us on a plate. Here's the characters, here's what happened to him. There's no mystery, there's no intrigue, and that is getting to know the character of Cal and Sigma and their relationship with the British Occult Secret Service makes me want to know more. And if you just told me everything from the beginning, maybe some people might not have wanted to keep on reading.
No, I'm not a fan of origin stories as the first story you tell. I
like... I definitely want to find out. I definitely want the origin story, but it's one of those things where, less is more.
Yeah, I think so. And I wanted to set the steam-powered aesthetic up, because there obviously is a steampunk aesthetic to it, and it helps to sell the book in a few ways, because it is such a strong aesthetic.
It's very, very popular.
It is very, very popular, but I never wanted it to be a full-on steampunk world. The way I imagined it was, this was the fork. Cal is the fork in the alternative history.
And let's be honest, if he was going to be any sort of aesthetic, it would be steampunk, because that was the technology at the time. Steam engines and all sorts of things would have been that way. I mean, electrical stuff would have come into like the 1880s, 1870s, 1890s.
So, and once that idea was in my head, whereas, oh, well, this little robot is where history diverts and maybe pushes technology in that direction. And I really and I thought it was a really nice idea that, well, what would be the reason for it to go off in that direction? Because it wouldn't just necessarily be the ingenuity of one person. I like the idea that a whole world, or a whole, say, dimensional world's technology gets shifted, a little nudge with magic or the occult that just shifts it that way.
Do you know what it reminds me? It reminds me of Watchmen, where the arrival of Dr. Manhattan has an impact on like the automotive industry, where he develops these new kind of cars that renders old cars obsolete. And it's a tiny thing. It's only done in the background, and it only really gets referenced at one point, where I think the original Night Owl is being honoured with an award, and he talks about how he's going to become a mechanic now that he's retiring from the superhero life. And then Dr. Manhattan says, oh, by the way, I've rendered your whole industry completely obsolete. Soz.
I tried not to do it quite that dramatically, I see.
No, again, that was very in your face and very clear, and it's much more subtle, and I'm sure we'll see different progression to that as the series goes on.
I sort of have a vague timeline in my head where I think, well, if we get to, say, the Second World War, I think that in the 1940s, on that timeline, then it would be getting closer to the full-on steampunk world that you see in other places.
Yeah, you know what else it's like? Is it going to give you another reference? It's like, have you read Anno Dracula?
Yes, I have.
It's very much like that in a way, because of the Victorian aesthetic, but also because that continued to have knock-on effects throughout history with vampires and all sorts.
Yes. I've read the first one. I think I've got the other two waiting. I don't know. I haven't gone back to that. I did enjoy it.
I've only read the first one, Anno Dracula. I haven't read like the Red Baron, whatever it is, or Dracula Cha-Cha-Cha, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I will get around to it eventually.
It is very tempting to do my own Ripper story in this world as well. I've been flirting with it, but
So many people do the Ripper story, and sometimes it works well, but most of the time it's kind of crap. Looking at you, Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
And with From Hell and everything, I don't know how I'd approach it. I'd have to come up with something that I was really, really happy with, because there is too much for it to be compared to.
Yeah. See, the Ripper really, really annoys me, because we know what this person, or perhaps even this group of people, did, but we don't know anything about them as a person, because at this point we're never going to find out who the Ripper was, which is great for a writer, because it means you've got all sorts of creative freedom, and so you can do different things, but at the same time that leaves you open to making very stupid mistakes time after time. I mean, H.G. Wells goes forward in the future to stop No! Jack the Ripper, maybe. Send to the future, sure, maybe. H.G. Wells was a real person. He had a life. Going on a rant. I don't buy this whole thing that in his story, The Time Machine, H.G. Wells was the guy who invented and did time travel. I understand that that's a perspective some people have, but it never really gets referenced directly in the novel as far as I'm aware, so it could be anyone. It could just be a guy, just an unnamed narrator. Why can't it just be an unnamed narrator?
I like unknown narrators. I think that's something that is quite specific to comics, actually. I was having this conversation. Who was I having this conversation with? I think I was having this conversation with Chris Sides recently, and it's something else that I'm writing at the minute, and he read for me. And there's little gaps in the story where there's a narration, and they're quite sarcastic. Well, I have a tone. They're quite sarcastic and a bit witty, and one of his notes was, I still can't figure out who the narrator was. And I said, well, you're never going to. I just want it to be an omniscient voice that chips in here and there. And that seems to work quite well with comics.
Like a documentary where you don't quite know who the random actor is they got to go do it. Is that John Hurt? No, it's not John Hurt. It can't be John Hurt. Damn it, I know it. Oh, fuck it, I'm going to IMDb it.
Oh, you can't IMDb a comic.
No, exactly. Oh, God. And Yeah, I like that. I think I like it when people experiment with narration. Sometimes it doesn't turn out particularly well, but other times it does. I like it when they've got, even when it's unknown, they've got a personality, they've got a character, they've got a bit sarcastic. My humour tends to lean a bit towards that. I don't know if you noticed.
Yes, mine too.
Yeah, but and I found that very much reflected in the character of Sigma as well. Sigma's a right little toe rag.
Yes, lots of fun.
So for the capers, Sigma is the demonic mouse we talked about.
So Sigma is a very, very powerful demon from the underworld that is trapped in the body of a mouse.
How humiliating.
Yes, and that's the source of the sarcasm and the ill temper. Really, is that.
I mean, you'd be ill-tempered if you were a mouse. I'd be ill-tempered.
Oh, maybe, I don't know. My daughter's hamster seems quite happy.
Well, that's hamsters. Hamsters are easy to please. Jeez, they're cheery bastards.
So the dynamic between Cal and Sigma is human in a robot body, demon in a mouse, but when they decide to work together, they can access Sigma's full demonic power.
And it's a scary thing to behold.
Yes, we tried to make it as scary as possible because Cal has to give Sigma permission to use this power, and even then has some vague control or time limitation over it. So there's a push me, pull you relationship and it's quite finely balanced. And Sigma really is trying to get control of the robot body because
you can't trust him. He's a demon.
No. Well, I posit the idea is demons are trying to find a way to cross over into the mortal realm, because their power they'll be able to control.
They could cause a lot of havoc, as we see in issue 1, Mirror Mirror.
Yes.
Yeah, the stuff goes down there. I don't think we'll need to spoil that because, frankly, I'd much rather the capers just experience these books directly. But stuff happens, and it's very interesting, which you could say about a lot of stories. It's a kind of a vague description. I do apologise.
Well, I was selling at conventions last year, and I had a few teenagers come up to me with parents, and the parents would sort of go, "Is it okay for them to read?" And I started going, "Yeah, it should be okay." And then I realised there's sort of child murder and.
Well, that's the thing. It's not what's in it; it's how you tell it. There is child murder, but the way you handle it, it's done in a very serious, non-gratuitous way, and it has a good resolution. I feel so. I think teenagers, they could read this absolutely.
Yeah, but it's something I've struggled with because you know when you write something, you once it's written, you sort of forget.
You're sort of lost in your own world, and it's just how you view it, and you don't stop. You find it very difficult to stop and think, how are other people going to view this? Yeah. Is the zombie cannibal Holocaust movie really going to go over well with audiences?
So that's always an interesting thing to think about after the writing's done. I do sort of forget about some of the stuff that I put in issue 1, but I was always confident that it served the story. It wasn't just gratuitously put in for shock value or anything like that. It illustrated what I was trying to put across.
Yeah, I think it worked very well in that regard. It's because that's the thing. It's a very sophisticated comic. It's very mature, yes, but it's sophisticated and it's subtle and it's not shock value and just shock sort of thing. It's not like guts painted the wall and stuff like that. It's dignified is the word I'm looking for. Dignified.
That's nice. It's quite. I think they're quite slow reads. It's written very densely.
I mean, because small press. You've only got a certain amount of pages you've got to get through. You've got to tell a story in that time.
Yeah, I think it shows with the 0 issue totally. It's the very limited resources, so I was trying to fit as much story into 8 pages. Because the 0 issue is 3 short stories, 2 8-page and 1 4-page, and I'm trying to fit as much story in there as I can to define the characters and the world and the rules between their dynamic.
But I mean, I've read cluttered books before. This is not that. Those stories didn't feel. I mean, yes, dense would be a word I could use, but I wouldn't say it was cluttered or overly detailed or jam-packed. It didn't, because I have read books like that, and frankly, it's a nightmare to read. It's just like, there's too much on the page. I don't like it. It's sensory overload. Not the case here.
No, but I'm very I do let my characters chat. They're quite chatty, and because I letter it as
Well,
well,
they're Victorian. Of course they chat.
I do curse the writer sometimes when I'm lettering it. I think I'm quite an indulgent writer sometimes, but it's all good stuff. And that's the beauty of lettering your own stuff. You get that final edit as you're lettering it. I can sort of cut a line here or change a line there. It's really nice.
Yeah, you got that, just the right amount of control. I like that. So let's talk about, there's two other main characters, well, secondary characters I mean to talk about, Hattie Griggs and Silas Pope, which are the most Victorian names I've ever read.
Silas Pope is my favourite character name that I've ever come up with. It is the most, like you say, the most Victorian thing ever. He's the super spy, really. He is the leader of the British Occult Secret Service, and he has a checkered history. He's got a bit of a shady past. I think he's done quite a few things that maybe are regretful, or things that he deemed necessary at the time. That,
well, he works for on Her Majesty's Secret Service. He's going to do some shady things.
Yeah, pretty much. And there's a few instances where we try and get a bit of insight into his history and things, and come up against some brick walls. So I've tried to keep him quite mysterious and quite aloof, really. And hopefully we'll explore his history a little bit more in the future.
Well, I mean, because in was it issue 0? You got these little dossiers on all the characters, and his one is like page 1 of 34.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you noticed that. I put that in, as a bit of a joke.
Well, he's like 48, was he? He's had a long career.
Well, that's what I love about Sam's rendering of him, because there are moments and panels where he's at rest, or he's talking about something particularly grave, and he does look sort of 40, 50. And there are panels where I think in the later books he's got a walking stick with a sword in it.
Oh.
And when he's doing battle and things, he looks suddenly like a much younger man, and I love that Sam's done that.
Yeah, I mean, that's very, very reminiscent of, again, Sherlock Holmes, and sort of because he was very much a thinker, but he was quite physically active.
Yes.
When he wanted to be.
Bare knuckle boxer and all of that sort of thing, yeah.
Bare knuckle boxers, I think they took it a wee bit too far in the Guy Ritchie movie.
Oh, they were fun. I don't mind them.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I've seen far, far worse adaptations of it, looking at you, Asylum, but it's... or possibly even now the BBC now, God. What's your opinion on the BBC Sherlock?
It lost me over the last 2 series. I think the first 2 series are some of the best TV that I've ever watched. I think I'm absolutely obsessed with them.
I mean, I thought the stories were very good and the characters were good. I think in terms of Holmes's character, they could not have been more wrong. At least with the Holmes stories I've read, he is, he's slightly detached from everyone else, but not in a, ooh, I'm so much better than everyone else, you're all stupid. He's actually quite kind and very understanding of sort of people, and actually very warm and open, especially with Watson and the people he meets. And I don't think the BBC series just got that at all. They just made him a sarcastic douchebag. And I think if it was an original character, I think he was quite fun. But as Sherlock Holmes, I kept thinking, like, no, you're not Sherlock Holmes. I don't like you as Sherlock Holmes. You're not fun to be around.
Yeah, I think as the series went on, you did see a lot more disdain from him. But in the later series, it seemed to me that it was operating in a sphere that was very much removed from, I would say, not reality, but
it was very much in its own Sherlock bubble.
Yeah, all of the characters were these hyper intelligent people that functioned on a completely different level from most of the people that would be watching it, which lent it an air of unreality, even more so than it was. And I think
turns out my wife's a spy.
Yeah, things like that. But it's all in the stories. But I think that the original stories are a lot more grounded, and like you say, there's a lot more warmth. I just think they made a few different decisions. I think
you're allowed to reinterpret things. I guess you're allowed to reimagine things. But I mean, there's always going to be people like you and me that's always going to come back to say, no, that's wrong. And I mean, have you seen that the American series Elementary?
Yeah, I like it. It's fun. It's light.
It's fun. I haven't watched it in ages, but Conversely, I didn't really like the stories of the characters. For me, that felt very much like just another American police procedural show, and they've got like a million of them. But I really liked the character of Sherlock. I thought he to me, felt very much of the character, but updated and modernized in all the right ways.
Well, I think they again the BBC and the American one, they show affection with the people close to them. But the BBC one, he does it in a very he does it through very disconnected actions. So he won't just come out and say that he cares about someone. He will do something that implies that he does.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's sort of a very emotionally stunted way of going about it. But yeah, the American one is a lot more procedural and very, very American. But
I swear every other, or at least every American police procedural drama show is like a quirky guy and a no-nonsense serious woman team up to solve crimes, and maybe they'll fall in love, maybe not, who knows. That's all of them. It's almost all of them, and I'm sick of it.
I don't know. The Watson arc in the American one is actually genuinely interesting.
Oh, so I can't remember. I think I stopped watching it right after the episode with Reese Ifans.
Well, she starts off as Holmes's sober companion.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting.
And she started as a doctor. She was a doctor, but she gave up to be a sober companion. And yeah, it was an interesting dynamic. She was sort of keeping on the straight and narrow. And as the series progressed, she actually learns Holmes's methods of to become a detective.
Is the way he uses his deduction skills.
Yeah,
Interesting.
she sort of becomes a pupil, and eventually she sort of branches off from him a little bit and starts her own practice and things. And yeah, I mean, I quite like that there's enough latitude for people to run with these stories. And ultimately it's business, and it's using intellectual properties, and it's brand recognition.
Public domain. Everybody loves the public domain.
And that's the trick. I mean, we've got the biggest celebration of IP of brand recognition at the minute with Infinity War. I mean, you can't go and see that film without seeing 10 other films before it.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, I love Infinity War, but you're right. Brand recognition is all the rage nowadays, and it is a problem within the film industry, I think, because so many people are more willing to use characters that we're already familiar with rather than create new characters that we can become familiar with. That seems to be the go-to, and I don't like it. Which is why I like this comic, because it feels reminiscent of other things, but it is still its own thing. And I would love... do you know what I want? I want a plushie of Cal. That's what I want.
No, it'd have to be cold and metal, and
I want to hug him.
But going back to brand recognition and things, I get annoyed that something has to be more than one film now. I just want a good story and good characters. And
everyone wants to do a franchise. Everyone wants a shared universe. And sometimes that works, like with Marvel. Other times, it's just like, can we not just have a good story without the need to... if you're going to do a shared universe, think it through, Universal.
But I don't think sometimes you don't even need sequels. I mean,
No.
What's recently? A Quiet Place. I've heard a lot of very good things about A Quiet Place.
I haven't seen it because I'm not a big horror fan, but I've heard really good things.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about it, and it's slated for a sequel. And it's like, from what I hear, that story did everything you would want it to do in one film, but because it made money, probably a lot of money, there will be another one. And as soon as money starts leading the story, I don't know.
I mean, yes, the film industry and the comic book industry and so on and so forth is an industry, and they're put in place to make money. But when you're trading in art, my maxim is that the story comes first. If something lends itself to continue in a sequel, great, because sometimes we get a story and we want to see more. Other times, it does not lend itself to a sequel.
Yeah.
And you really need to think about that, because let's be honest, the ideas are never going to stop coming. New ideas, new people will always come, and Hollywood will never suddenly find itself, oh my god, we've run out of films to make. What will we do now? That's never going to happen. So you just, I know it's so tempting because they're just thinking about the bottom line, but you need to think about this because we're the ones that have to sit through it at the end.
Well, we don't. You can choose not to.
Okay, you might choose not to. I have a problem. I will just go. I'll go anyway. Maybe this time it'll be okay. Oh no. You're talking to a guy who hates Twilight and has seen all of the movies.
I can't help you with that. That's
No one can.
But that's the only power you have. That's the only way that production companies or industries are going to take notice, is if people stop spending money.
Yeah, stop spending money. I think it's that, but also actual make demands like send emails, send letters, go on a podcast and rant and rave about it. Maybe they'll listen, maybe they won't, and yes, ultimately voting with your wallet or something like that is the number one way. But if this is the thing, they will always follow the money in Hollywood and the comic book industry. So if you say, hey, I would buy this, or I pay money to see this if you made it, it would. If enough people say that, it will get made. I think that way. I think we have more power to influence this industry than a lot of people think. I think we can be a better force in terms of getting better stories and better ideas and better practices out there. And
I don't know. I'm a bit nervous about that, because I'm not a huge supporter of fans.
And fan communities can be very toxic and can turn it on itself, and what people think they want isn't necessarily a good thing. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't think that means we should stop entirely. There's going to be pitfalls. Progress is not a straight line. But if we keep trying to be better, we will eventually become better.
I think you just consume what you like to consume. If I don't like something, I'll say if I'm asked, but I won't feel the need to let everyone know my opinion. I just won't go and see the next thing.
Well, I'm a critic, so I have to let people know my opinions.
I guess so.
Oh, I'm so cursed. But moving on, I want to talk about the Kickstarters you've done. You've done several Kickstarters. I think, looking at them, they've been pretty big successes.
Yeah, it's been a real surprise. So it's just over 2 years ago since I did my first one, which was for Cognition 0. And I went into that with no real extensive social media presence. I'd only just started getting to know a few people on the small press scene. I broke all of the rules that when asked for advice now, I tell people. So, because usually the best way to use Kickstarter is to take an audience there, not to necessarily find an audience. But with this one, I mean, I've used Kickstarter to find an audience. I've been very lucky with that.
I say so. With the first issue, Cognition issue 1, you had an 800 quid goal, and you're currently in excess of 3,000 quid.
Was that issue 1? Was it?
That was issue 1.
Yeah, so that was the second campaign. The main trick that I've always used, I've used Kickstarter to get us over the line. I've only used it for print costs. So I've tried to self-fund for production and basically get it to the point where we're ready to hit print. And then I go to Kickstarter and ask for print and distribution funds, basically. So I use it as pre-orders. I don't like selling it as pre-orders because there are some real Kickstarter diehards that love the idea that they are in on the ground floor and helping you make it, and I absolutely respect that, and it works for some people. But I've never been a fan of the idea of asking for someone's money and then making them wait a year until they can have it. But that's my own hang-up. I don't like projects hanging around my neck and feeling beholden to people.
I think that's a good hang-up to have.
Well, it's just my personal... that's the only way I can do it. Otherwise, I would worry. But other people, it's up to them. And Kickstarter is the place where there are a lot of people willing to give you a go, give you the benefit of the doubt, and hope that they get it. But I've tried to build up my specific Kickstarter reputation as I'm ready to go when I ask for money, and you'll get it pretty quickly if we get funded.
Absolutely. And What's the current Kickstarter you're doing right now? That was issues 0 to 4, the full story arc.
Yep. So I've done 3 Cognition ones so far, which is 0, 1, and 2, and I did those as single issues, and that was a year ago now, so it's been a bit of a gap. But what I wanted to do is I didn't want to do 2 more campaigns because Kickstarters are quite tiring.
Yeah, yeah. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of preparation. You do a video on all of the Kickstarter campaigns I've seen, and they're very good videos.
Oh, thank you. That's the bit I dislike the most.
Because it's you telling people about the comic and stuff, but it's also got interesting visuals from the comic, and it's also got really cool music. Like they're atmospheric as fuck.
Yeah, I was fortunate to find that music on sort of a copyright-free music site, and I just stumbled across it and go, that's it, that's the vibe. But yeah, so he's credited at the end of the video. I think it's Kai Engel, but it's really good music. I was so fortunate with that. But this campaign is for issues 3 and 4. So I'm doing 2 issues. We're doing 2 issues at once to finish off the story arc. So this completes the story that people have bought into 2 years ago, and it will put either a full stop or a comma on things for now. We've resolved what happens in the story, and I've left it in a nice place, I think, to maybe pick up a little while down the road.
Yeah, you're not counting your chickens before they've hatched.
No, because it takes quite a bit of time and resources to get these things going. And what I'm planning to do is I wanted to do 2 single issues for this campaign, so the people that support us at the very beginning have a set of single issues. I could have just made a trade straight off and did a Kickstarter as a trade so people could complete the story like that. But I wanted to complete the set of single issues, really, and we'll think about a trade maybe further on down the road. I might pitch it around first, or I might go back to Kickstarter again later with it.
Well, I think it's like you say, don't go to Kickstarter, you have to find your audience. You've got an audience. I mean, when is the deadline for the current Kickstarter?
The current Kickstarter ends on the 31st of May at 10:30 in the morning, I think. So it's basically the whole month of May that we're running. We've been going for, as of this moment, I think we're in our 3rd day, and we're about £300 away from our target. So it's been a really great start.
Yeah, you got a £2,950 goal, as they earn like 300 quid away. It's going well. We're going to see this, I think. 26 days to go as of the date of recording, which is the 4th of May. May the 4th be with you. Oh gosh, I didn't have any plans to do anything Star Wars related today. I should have made plans. I've got the DVDs. I'll go and watch the original theatrical cut.
Oh no, you need the what was it? Return of the Jedi with the extra no.
Oh god, oh, no! Why, Lucas? Why? It was fine. It was fine. It's like you had this perfect Fabergé egg, and you thought, I know what I'll do. I'll paint a big goddamn smiley face on it.
We were like tinkering. Or like a little edit at the end.
Yeah, but there's tinkering, and then there's coming back like, what is it, 30 fucking years later and saying, I know what I missed. Oh my god. The no was probably the stupidest part of the 3rd prequel movie. Like that scene with Darth Vader where he's first becoming Darth Vader. It's like, I thought she was alive. I felt it. And I thought, oh my god, this is so dramatic. This is so cool. He tears himself out of that weird restraint things. He's stumbled forward, taking his first step as Darth Vader. I am shivering in my seat thinking, oh my god, this is so cool. Palpatine's smiling in the background thinking, yes, my evil machinations have come to light. I think this is so cool. And then he says, no. And I'm thinking, you ruined it.
I think the sound tech just upset James L. Jones in the recording booth, and they didn't want to waste it.
Obviously, I'm sorry, Mr. James L. Jones. We couldn't get you a latte. You couldn't.
No.
Oh,
and then
God.
just corner going, we'll use that.
Are you sure, Mr. Lucas? I really don't think it will fit in the scene. No. This is what we need. Oh God. Still better than. Well, what is your opinion on the new movies? God.
Yeah, I like them.
Sorry?
I like them.
I've got the most mixed feelings about them, I swear. Oh God, I waited for Solo to come out. I really want Solo to be good.
I don't care if Solo's good. I think it's going to be worth watching just for Donald Glover.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The rest will be trash, but I think Donald Glover is going to absolutely steal that as Lando.
Yay! I mean, that's perfect casting. That is. Yeah.
Have you watched Atlanta? It's fantastic.
No, I haven't watched any of the trailers because I don't watch trailers for anything I know I'm going to see.
No, it's Atlanta is Donald Glover's TV show.
Oh right. Oh, sorry. I thought you said and the trailer. Atlanta. No, I haven't seen that. No.
It's fantastic. It really is brilliant.
Oh, I'll have to give it a watch. I'm a big fan of Community, so.
Yeah.
Oh god. Oh.
No, Star Wars films. I like them. I like that they're I like that they're letting directors play around with it, to tell the truth, and
telling different stories, much like the original expanded universe, which is now Legends.
And as long as it's story led and they're letting creative people play in the sandbox sort of thing, then inevitably you're going to have a few blips. But I think in general, it's the right choice because they're going to make films that are not for every Star Wars fan, but I think for that franchise to survive, they're going to have to branch out beyond the core Star Wars fans and basically do what the Marvel films have been doing. That they're making genre films that happen to have superheroes. So I think Star Wars are going to do a similar sort of thing.
I completely agree because I mean, there's so many different Star Wars stories out there. Again, with the expanded universe. Recently, I've been reading the first novel in the X-Wing series. And I've read many other Star Wars novels before, and this one I didn't particularly like. It's not a bad story necessarily, but I never really connected with it as I have other Star Wars stories. So you're never going to get anything that's perfect for anyone, but you're going to get something that's going to appeal to someone.
I mean, Rogue One was basically just a Star Wars war movie, wasn't it?
Basically, yeah, with a bit like maybe a spy thriller edge, I guess.
Solo's probably going to be a bit of a caper film.
Yeah, a bit of maybe a heisty film sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think it's going to open up a lot more once they can get away from the Skywalkers a bit.
Yeah, when they wrap up the the sequels. I've got to start thinking of the sequel movies now. I don't think they ever should have started doing those movies, but I'm interested to see where this new franchise takes us. We got to stop geeking out, man. We got to keep talking about your stuff. This is the stuff that. Kickstarter are going great. Future of the series looks pretty bright. So I'll keep asking this question because I think it's an interesting question. What's the one story you want to tell that you haven't told yet?
I haven't got one story. I've got stories forever in this world. Seriously,
stories for days.
Yeah, I have. What I would like to do. I've got an origin-ish story after this one at the back of my mind, which sort of explains a bit more about how Callan Sigma came to be, and sort of the crescendo of it is the Crimean War.
Oh.
And that's sort of a one story arc. And after that, in my head, it's really roughly sketched out, but I see them travelling around the whole of the British Empire. So you have almost like an anthology per continent or country, so you can have
because I think it got mentioned in episode 0 again in that dossier, something that happened in Hong Kong.
Yeah, because as part that was I think they were folding Hong Kong into the British Empire, or I can't really remember the history of that now. But I see them travelling around, so you'd have a group of stories in India focused on Indian folklore and the British Empire's involvement in India. Then you can have one in Africa, and so they can travel around the British Empire. Canada, yeah, why not?
Canada, it's the best place to be. I don't know the full song.
But basically, they'd travel around, and all of the stories would involve that locale's take on their folklores and things like that.
Well, that's interesting. I like how when stories expand to other places and different cultures and talk about, because it's never going to be. I've always found it weird in stories where it turns out the place where the story is set is the one kind of mythology that actually exists in the whole world. Like, the story takes place in Greece. Well, Greek mythology is the only one that's real, and it just happens to be located to this one specific geographical point. I always found that kind of weird.
Yeah, but it's because, that's
how the story is done. That's how the story is
Well, you
done.
didn't have cultures travelling around, do you? So that culture is always going to stay in one place. I guess the Romans spread it about a bit more, didn't they?
Yeah, the Romans helped with stuff like that, and various other travelling cultures helped spread tales. People like the Grimm brothers, something like that. And because good stories, have a tendency to get around. Speaking of which, where can people find Cognition and your other stuff? How can people get their hands on it?
The easiest way to do it is through the Kickstarter at the moment. You can catch up on the whole series all at once, and we'll fulfill through that. And otherwise, we have a Big Cartel site that will be updated once all of the Kickstarter is fulfilled. Otherwise, you can follow me on Twitter, and we have a page on Facebook.
Absolutely. Didn't I see somewhere that you're on Comic House?
We are, yeah. The first 3 issues of Cognition are on Comic House. So if you're subscribed to that, you can catch up with the series so far. I won't be adding the last 2 until I usually put a delay on it. So it'll probably be about 3 months after the Kickstarter backers have had their rewards out, because I like to try and keep it exclusive to the Kickstarter for a little while.
Absolutely, and we will be providing a link to the Kickstarter in the show notes. So, Capers, now you're done listening to us, get down there and back this project. It's worth it. Trust me, it's got Scott Merritt's seal of approval. And I'm just trying to think what else we can talk about. I think we've pretty covered. Oh, there's this one thing I want to talk about. I saw this thing that you've included. I think it's part of the stretch goals, or possibly one of the rewards you've done. It's interactive pinups.
Oh, that was an old one. That was on the issue 1 or 2 campaign, I think. I tried to do an interactive pinup thing. It didn't really take off, but it was an interesting idea that I actually cribbed from Ryan K. Lindsay.
All right.
And Ryan K. Lindsay runs these excellent Kickstarter campaigns, and he keeps everything digital because he lives in Australia, and worldwide shipping is an absolute nightmare that sort of hamstrings everything.
And Australia, I, as far as I'm aware, is particularly particular about what goes in and out of the country.
So he runs his campaigns digital only. So he comes up with some of these wonderful rewards, keeping everything digital and obviously taking the shipping out of it. And one of his ideas he had was these. He'd have a selection of art pinups, and he'd add speech bubbles to them, and he'd write cater to each person. So I tried that in the last campaign. I had a few people, but it wasn't successful enough to bring back this time. This time we have little patches. That's a new thing that I haven't done before. I try and come up with one new bit of merchandise for each one. And I've made some notebooks, specially printed notebooks. We've done T-shirts. I think I've got a few of those left.
I'm a sucker for a T-shirt. Ooh.
Yeah, I think we've only got small and medium left now.
That's good. I'm a medium.
There you go. Yeah, got some mediums left. Get in there.
Oh, okay.
But we've got little patches, special agent patches I've designed for this one. I was quite pleased with that.
Oh, cool. I think that's really cool. That always helps. But I think the great thing about this is the story and the comic. People are going to come back to this because this is a comic worth coming back to. I do still want to read issues 2 and 3 when I can. I might I'll find a way to get my hands on those. Don't you worry. And I just like this comic. It's a good comic, and I'm really glad that you came to talk to us about it today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
No, not a problem. And if you enjoyed this show, Capers, you would please tell your friends, shout it from the rooftops, and if you haven't already, go back and listen to some of our other super episodes, like, for example, our episode where we talked about Comic House, and talked about the stuff that's on there, listen to that. And you can listen to the show on iTunes, Podbean, YouTube, or at PodCapers.com. We have a Patreon. Check out the rewards, patreon.com/AP2HYC. If you want to get in touch with us, suggest show topics, or maybe you want to come on the show yourself, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AP2HYC, or email us at podcapers@AP2HYC.com. Thank you very much to Dan Harris for our logo, the lovely microphone, the red and blue 3D glasses, those are mine. And thank you for listening. This has been PodCapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. Cue the music!